Ready to go? All right. All right, guys, it's time. Thanks for coming out. Lots of you here. So today I want to talk a bit about the dark web, and hopefully in a way that you haven't thought about it before. But first, I want to talk about why those slides aren't moving. Let's do this a different way. There we go. Okay. Forget the presenter notes. We don't need those. All right. So I want to talk about kind of the idea behind this and why I even wanted to talk about the dark web to begin with. And I want to tell you a story, a little story, probably a story that many of you in this room can tell because you're security professionals. And the story starts something like this, right? So I'm at home and I'm mowing my yard and I'm talking to my neighbor who knows I work in security. Or you're in your office and, somebody drops by because they know that you work in security. Or just friends or family, my mom likes to send me random texts and ask you questions about security. And the way this story goes and the way this question goes is that person, whoever it is in your life, right, shows up and they look at you and they kind of look away and they look back. And then they look away and they shuffle their feet a little bit. And they want to ask you something, right? Usually it's like, is email secure? No. Okay, whatever. Or can you fix my computer? Definitely no. But the question, as they look at you and then look away, it's like, spit it out already, right? And so they look at you and they kind of get up close and they whisper a little bit and they're like, have you been on the dark web? Has anybody had that question, had that conversation, right? If you've been in security for a little while, probably. Because people don't know what to think of the dark web. They're like, what is this thing? Can I even say it out loud? Is the dark web like Voldemort? We don't say that word, right? And so that was why I wanted to have this conversation, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the dark web and exactly what it is. Before I dig into all of this, though, I do want to have a little disclaimer, okay? I'm going to talk about things that have happened, okay? They actually did. They're things that happened. So this isn't political. I don't really care why they happened or who did them or, who was involved. It's just things that happened that illustrate a point. This is not a conspiracy theory, okay? Again, things happen. We can look at facts and make determination about how we want to approach those facts, but some of the thinking behind why we should be embracing the dark web, some people would think or say is conspiracy theories or something else. That's not what this is about. This is also not a call to anarchy, okay? I am not condoning illegal activities. I'm not asking you to go participate in something that's going to get you in trouble. In fact, exactly the opposite. So before we dig into this too far, though, I want to level set on a couple of things, okay? A lot of people in here, maybe, I don't know, maybe you go on the dark web every day. Maybe you host your personal bio on the dark web. That's weird. But, I don't know what everybody's experience is here. So I just, for the purposes of this conversation, I'd like to level set about what I'm talking about. So on this graphic that I stole from the internet, it shows the internet as a whole. Okay, and what they're saying is that the World Wide Web, the thing most of us think of as the internet, is the tip of the iceberg. Okay, that's everything that's indexed or publicly accessible. And then somewhere in the middle is the deep web, which is stuff that's not necessarily publicly accessible, but network connected to the internet. And again, the purpose here is not to debate semantics, because if anybody's really into this stuff, we could probably go off in the lobby out there later, and we could argue for a really long time about what constitutes the definition of the World Wide Web or clear web or internet, what the deep web is, what the percentages are, doesn't matter for the points that I want to talk about today. And the final piece is the dark web. Okay, and again, from the graphic that I stole from the internet, even that says this is the place where all the illegal activity happens. So, and basically what we're saying is that the dark web is just a layer that is a part of the rest of the internet. And I just want to like disband any of the whispers right now, right? The dark web is just technology. Okay, you can say it out loud. It's okay. You can talk about it. You can tell your friends about it. Just because you went on the dark web doesn't mean you bought drugs or sold guns or tried to hire a hitman, okay? But the important thing is that it's technology that was designed in a specific way. And that's what I want to talk about today. So the technology itself that powers the dark web is designed to be private. Okay, it's designed to be anonymous. It's designed to be secure. And depending on how you approach the dark web, it's also designed to be decentralized. So why do we care about those things, right? Because what I've seen as I've been in technology now for over 20 years is that as new technology comes along, somewhere along the way, we start thinking that we have to solve problems or come up with ways to deal with things like privacy that supposedly we've never thought of before. It's like, this is a new paradigm. We've got to do new stuff, right? But I want to dig into a little bit those aspects of the dark web, privacy, security, and decentralization, and talk about where we come from in that space. So we'll start with privacy. Who here cares about privacy? Okay, a couple of hands. It's becoming more popular, okay? Used to be people were like, you giving me free email? I don't care, okay? I get a coupon to the barbecue place? I don't care, right? There's been a little bit of a shift back the other direction in the last couple of years because people are starting to realize, as there's a breach announced 3 times a week, that maybe all my data in the world shouldn't be on the internet. That's not where it belongs. What we hear lots of times when we talk about privacy is this idea of, I have nothing to hide. Who has nothing to hide in here? I got one hand up, but I think he was actually waving at somebody. 2 hands, okay. So somebody in here thinks you have something to hide. I think a more important question is, who here has an identity? Very few people. This is disturbing. Okay. Who here feels like they have an identity? That there's something about you that's unique, right? Okay, a lot of people now are sort of raising their hands. I think they're embarrassed about their identity. Okay, an identity. Okay. There you go, very good. You have lots of identities. I like that. Okay, so most people cultivate uniqueness. They cultivate an identity. Okay, whether it's online or in real life, whatever it is, most people, choose the shoes, the clothes they wear because they want to look a certain way. You get a certain haircut, you have certain friends, you participate in certain things. Whatever it is, you're building up an individual picture of yourself. Okay, and everybody has that. So I want to look back at what identity has meant historically. Okay? Who knows what happened, and this is going to be a stretch, right? Because I'm about to talk about history. Okay? And when I talk about this, today history means 10 minutes ago on Instagram. Okay? Yeah, but things have happened before today. Things that have influenced the way that we've built our societies. And that stuff is important as we look forward into technology and start thinking about how do we take those principles and the things that we learned and apply them today? Don't act like we just made them up, right? I've got kids that are in those teen years, and my favorite thing is when they walk up and they're like, or I tell them, it's like, a hashtag's actually an octothorpe, right? There was a name for it before Twitter, okay? Or a pound sign, I'm fine with that. Right, but what we're seeing now in technology is it moves really, really rapidly. People keep feeling this need. It's like, I have to come up with a new name for something. No, it existed already. Okay, privacy isn't new. So as we go back into history, who can tell me what happened in December of 1941? Yeah, Pearl Harbor. Okay, so Pearl Harbor for the United States was the beginning of World War II. It had been going on before that. Okay, but we had been staying out of it. We were like, I don't think so. But Pearl Harbor happened, and everything changed in the United States. And so because of that, the President of the United States signed an executive order that made certain parts of our country strategic military zones. Now, as a result of that, in February of 1942, there were hundreds of thousands of people that were involved in their communities, ran businesses, were born in this country, were active going to school, had homes, lived all over this country, okay, for generations, who had nothing about them that was wrong except for an identity. Okay, they had the audacity to have parents or relatives that were born in Japan. You really should keep that under control. Right? So they had this identity that resulted in soldiers showing up at their door with guns in the United States, okay, in California, on the East Coast, and taking all of these Japanese Americans, they were born here, most of them, and putting them onto trains and taking them out to internment camps where they were stuck in shacks, they were surrounded by barbed wire, and they were guarded by soldiers with guns. And that was a difference between a Tuesday and a Wednesday. On Tuesday, they were business owners and neighborhood members and, students. On Wednesday, they were prisoners of war. Here's the interesting thing about this event that happened. 59 years later, in the year 2000, even though the U.S. Census Bureau had denied it for a very long time, it was revealed that they used census data to identify these people. And then 7 years after that, it was revealed, even though it had been denied, and it was expressly against the statement at the top of the census form that said, we will not disclose this information. They used detailed micro census data to the block level and house level to identify and locate Japanese Americans. They were incredibly successful at rounding them all up because they violated their privacy and their civil rights and used something that had been turned over in good faith as something that should be used to help run our country in a more effective manner to put them in prison. This activity is part of the foundations of the right to privacy. There's lots of other examples that happened in this time period of World War II. But it was so impactful that we learned something. It's odd when that happens, but we learned something. And when the war was over, the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights was drafted. Okay, part of that, as you'll see here, is Article 12, okay, and says you shouldn't be subjected to arbitrary interference with privacy. It's a human right. And we talk about it today like it's an option, okay? I want to talk about decentralization next. Now we're going to move back in history according to the Instagram 10-minute timeline, but not nearly as far. Okay, 2013. Who knows who this guy is? I got some hands. Who we got? Yeah, Edward Snowden. Who's ever heard of this company? A couple of people. So LavaBit was the secure encrypted email service that Edward Snowden used to transfer information. Now, up until this dude showed up, the guy running LavaBit was running a successful technology company. And then Edward Snowden came along, and he got a letter that said, you need to turn over your SSL keys and your encryption keys for everybody, because Edward Snowden used the service. Now, if you're running a secure service, that the whole point behind it is that it's secure and it's private, what do you think the fastest way is to kill your business? Maybe give over all the information inside of your service, right? So he was faced with a choice. His choice was, do I violate everything about my company and turn this information over, or do I go to jail? Because there's no other option. And not only that, when this happened, you get what's called a national security letter. Anybody know what that is? Go read about it. They're cool. They're from the FBI. Okay, national security letters, when you get them, they come essentially with a gag order. Okay, so you get it, you can't even talk about it. You can't tell somebody you got it, you can't tell what it's about. And so the CEO of the company was in this position where he really didn't have many choices. And what he chose to do, instead of give the information over or go to jail, was shut down the company. Okay? Now this is unfortunate because it's something he'd been working at for a long time. You know, lots of us work for companies and find them to be pretty important. They pay my bills. Lots of us have started companies and know what it's like to put that kind of effort into something and care about it. And in one day, this guy lost his company just because of somebody that happened to use his service that he had no control over. And the challenge here is that when we work in a centralized model, there's always somebody at the middle of that that has control. So if you have a company that's important to you, but you're operating inside of a centralized model, you find out that you have very few choices. Okay? You can either comply or you can destroy your company. You know, we see this in lots of other places too. Who's ever downloaded an app on their phone? Oh, a couple of you. All right. When you did that, you had permissions, right? And now you can agree to the permissions or not. But where's the point where you get to agree to some of the permissions and still use the software? It's either don't and don't use the software, or agree to everything that you want to do. Yeah, I want to play this game right now. It needs access to my phone. It needs access to all my contacts. It needs access to take pictures of me. Why? I don't know, right? But you have no choice there, right? And we see this expanding. So there was this journalist who decided that she was going to go through an experiment and cut the big 5 tech companies out of her life. Okay, Facebook, Amazon, some people say Netflix. I don't know why, but whatever. I guess they invent some technology. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google, and Microsoft. And what she did was she went 1 week at a time, and she had a VPN set up that blocked all the IP addresses. And you can see the headline here, I cut the 5 tech giants from my life. It was hell, okay? Because what she found out was that if you want to turn off Amazon, good luck, right? Because just about everything you use, you want to use a Lyft or an Uber, guess what? They run on AWS, okay? You want to use Google Maps, guess what? It runs on Google Cloud now, sometimes AWS, depends on what you're dealing with, but the point is that almost everything that you use on a daily basis from a technology perspective goes back through one of these 5 companies. And so that affects your freedom and your ability to make choice. And if you choose not to, it's turned off. No recourse. Let's talk for a minute about security. I was going to get there eventually. It is a security conference. What happens when you choose to browse the web securely? Has anybody ever done that? Yeah, all right, we got one. You don't use the internet, right? Yeah, sure. So browsing the web securely, there's a few components that go into this. So you can turn off ads because, you know, who wants that stuff in your face? And they're always putting cookies on your machine. And then they invite other cookies onto your machine. And it's like this whole thing. Plus, I just don't like them because I think it's weird that when I look at something on my phone, it shows up on my wife's computer later, right? And vice versa. I don't care that much about shoes, all right? So, but if you start blocking ads, then you start seeing this stuff. It's like, we noticed you're using an ad blocker. Our site depends on this to survive. Please turn this off or we're not gonna let you look at stuff. Okay, so that's a pretty minor thing though, right? It's like ads, whatever. Well, then you start blocking some cookies. Okay, and if you start blocking cookies, you actually start breaking things for real. The IRS really doesn't like it when you block cookies. They don't like it when you block anything, it's weird. Amazon stops working, you can't log into Gmail. There's a few other things that if you turn off cookies, your web really stops functioning. And if it does function at all, it looks like something, I really expect the GIFs with the music when you load the page, it looks really old. How about blocking scripts? Okay, you turn on script blocking, go visit a news site like CNN, and you'll notice this thing pop up with, I think there's 45 scripts that tried to load when I hit the first page. And I don't know what most of them are. So what happens though is when you block it and then you try to navigate the site doesn't work anymore, right? And if you blocked ads and cookies and scripts, you probably don't even see this much. You know, to do these screenshots, I couldn't turn them all on at once because there's nothing to show you. It's blank screens. I can only do one at a time. Well, then what if you add on top of that deciding to browse anonymously? It's like, I don't want you to know where I'm coming from. Well, then they just say no, right? We have to know where you're coming from or you can't see our website. And then if we take all of this stuff and put it together, people have even written books about it, right? Cookies, scripts, ads, surveillance capitalism. There's a reason why all this stuff exists, right? Because it's making people money, because people are getting data from it, because, and it goes further than that. Because then we start having problems understanding what is true. Because a lot of us look to the internet now for truth. This is where you get information. That's the promise, right? That's the cool thing about the internet. You know, I rebuilt an engine over the summer. I did it with YouTube. I've never worked on a car in my life. Okay, I have no idea how to do that. But I can watch a video and I can do what that dude did, right? So it's like having a master mechanic behind you all the time. That's awesome. Okay, I've learned so many things in my career from the internet, and that's really cool. You know, but now somehow it just doesn't feel like a safe place to be, and I'm never sure what to trust anymore, right? Because they take all of these components, and it's not just ads anymore. It's not just a cookie on your machine, because I don't really care about that. You know, it's not just that they're tracking who I am, because that's creepy and weird, but even that sometimes I can live with. But then it all comes together and I go and I look for information and I get something that I don't even know if is real, okay? And that's where things really get interesting, right? There's some studies that have been done and there's this thing now called the search engine manipulation effect, okay? And it's based on all these things I just talked about, where because of what they know about us and because of how they manage and track our computers, they understand now how you're gonna respond to things when they put it in front of you, okay? And we've seen things like in this study that was done in 2015, they could change people's position on fracking by as much as 33%, okay, pro or con. Okay, we've talked, everybody's familiar with election interference, all kinds of other things that go on, and that's based on this stuff that I'm talking about right now, okay, and human nature a little bit. And if you want to see it in action, any of you can do this, right? So there's this fun little game you can play with Google. Now, it probably won't work with most of the people in the room because we all do the same thing, right? We're kind of boring. It's like we're in technology, we look at security and privacy stuff, you know, whatever. But do it with somebody that doesn't do what you do. And go to Google, works especially well with the images page, right? And search something. And then compare your results. Okay, what they see and what you see are not going to be the same thing. You're going to get a different set of images. You're going to get a different set of information because it's curated to who they are. It's curated to their identity that we were talking about earlier. And now we're in a place where, like I said, you don't know what's true. So before I jump a little further into the dark web, I just want to summarize, these ideas here of the importance of privacy, security, decentralization. And the natural question then becomes, why bother with the dark web? Can't the internet be better? Can't we make it a better place? Well, maybe. I don't know. Right? There's some things that are happening out there. There's some things that hopefully will make it better. We can talk about technologies that are really promising, like blockchain. There could be some interesting applications of that allow it to function on the internet in a way that helps solve some of these security, privacy, decentralization problems, depending on how it's implemented. So that's wicked cool, and I'm excited about it. There can be information sharing, right, just between people, where we say, here's a good service, here's something that's ethical, here's something that doesn't track your data. You should really use DuckDuckGo instead of Google, or whatever it is that you decide to do, right? So yeah, maybe, could help. There's watchdog groups out there like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, right? They're constantly looking at this stuff. They're looking at laws that are being passed. They're looking at technology companies to see what their terms and conditions look like. Are they violating people's rights? So there's some of that that's going on too that could help. However, we still have issues with the internet, okay? And the first one is an asymmetry of power, and that stems from that decentralization problem, okay? I don't have the internet in my house in a box where I can control everything about it. I depend on lots and lots of other people. I depend on those big 5 tech companies to give me access to the World Wide Web. I depend on that for my YouTube videos. I depend on that as I do research for this talk, right? And if I don't like what they're doing, guess what I can do about it? Any ideas? Yeah. Somebody give me a better idea. There's a lot of people in here. Somebody's got a good idea, right? What do you do? Decentralize. So I decentralize Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Google. Yeah, I have no control over that. Yeah, decentralization, absolutely. Okay? But I can't do anything about it. I can either participate or not. Where's the choice in that? Right? And then there's a network effect. How many of you guys are on Mastodon? 2, 3. How many of you are on Twitter? A lot more hands. How many of you tried to get your friends to go to Mastodon and nobody would go? 1. Right? We have network effect issues. Everybody's on the internet. They're already using all the stuff that's out there. Who uses Venmo? There's a few of you. Yeah, who got your friend that has Venmo installed on their phone to take Monero instead? Nobody. Right? It's a pain. It's like, I don't want to download another app, connect my bank account to it, all this kind of stuff. So wherever people are, that's where the stuff is, and that's where everybody goes. So we have a problem in that all of this decentralized, or not decentralized, not private, not secure stuff has all the people, and nobody wants to leave because the alternative is useless, right? And then the last thing here, and I really can't read that, lack of monetary motivation, right? People are making money at this stuff. Okay, there is no incentive. If you control it all and you're making lots and lots of money on it, why would you change a thing? You could go sit in front of Congress all day long and talk about privacy and just not care because you're still cashing checks. Bigger checks than their salary and then the whole government makes probably, right? So at a point, you just don't care. You're going to do whatever it takes to keep the gravy train rolling. You're going to say whatever they want to hear and then go do what you want to do. And so even if we had some companies on the internet decide, yeah, we'll do the right thing. Hey, Facebook, Apple, right? We're going to protect your personal information. Right? How do you know? What can you do about it? Do you know if Apple's protecting your personal information? I pinky swear, but I made another $1 billion off of selling your data, so I don't care, right? Like I said, this all comes back to choice, and that's where the dark web comes in. That's why I wanted to talk today to the security community about embracing the dark web, because the rest of the world is like the people I described to begin with. They whisper to me, have you ever been on the dark web? Okay, and years ago, there was this really cool little operating system that people liked called Linux, and it wasn't on anything. Who here installed Linux like way back? Okay. My first Linux, and I wasn't right at the beginning, but I was rotating 32 3.5-inch floppy disks, right? Because I wouldn't hold enough, and I didn't have enough floppy disks to actually write it on. So I was rotating them. It was like I'd put one in, install that piece of it, and the one I just took out, I'd write with the next segment of the image, right? And so, and it was really obnoxious and hard. You know, and there were some famous people in the Linux community that talked about, oh, Linux is awesome. You just run a few shell scripts, you know, you get down to the low level, write some C code, you know, pretty soon the thing works kind of on some hardware maybe, right? But it was really, really hard. And now I can stand up in front of you guys. I can walk into a place like this. I can plug my Linux laptop in and it works. And guess what? I installed it. And I didn't install any drivers, it worked. Power management works, I can close the thing and open it again and it still works. You know, that's awesome, because for people that don't remember, that was a gamble. You did not close a Linux laptop, right? You might have to reinstall afterwards. But that all relates to the dark web, because the dark web is hard and scary right now. And so we need to do something about that. And technology, and especially security people, are the perfect people to do that. Because who better to help, you know, people get onto the dark web than people that understand security? Because there are things there you should avoid. Who better to help people understand privacy than people that have been looking at privacy issues for as long as technology's been around? And hopefully before, if we remember that stuff happened before us, right? Or who better to look at decentralization than people that understand why that matters? So I'm going to dig into just real quick some of the dark web technologies, because that's not the focus of this talk, but I want to make sure that everybody has enough information to walk away from here and go do something. So the first thing to understand about the dark web is there isn't one of them. Does everybody understand that? It's not just the dark web. Okay? There's 3 major dark web technologies, and they don't necessarily interoperate. You know, I mean, you can connect to some things from other things, but so the 3, the one most people have heard about is Tor. Okay, so the onion routing network. So there's Tor. It provides some things. It gives you some anonymity, gives you some privacy, gives you some security. It's got 3 layers of encryption that it goes through when it's making connections, which is awesome. Unfortunately, it does have some centralized aspects to it. And I'll show you an interesting thing when I get to actually demoing some of the dark web in a second that relates to centralization. The next technology is I2P, okay? I2P focuses again on anonymity or privacy, security. They wanted to be cooler than Tor, so they did 4 layers of encryption. And they have some decentralized self-organizing aspects to the network. Now, again, the purpose of this talk isn't to give you everything and make you walk out of here as dark web experts. The purpose is for you to take this slide right here and go learn. Everybody in here is a security person, okay? So I want you to give you a little bit to go fish, and then come back hopefully next year, you know, and do your own presentations on the cool thing you did on the dark web. But the last one is Freenet. Freenet's a little bit different, okay? It provides anonymity, but it's really focused on censorship-resistant communication, okay, and publishing. So Freenet's really cool because it provides anonymity. It also provides total decentralization. There's like a complete copy of everything shared everywhere, okay? So you try to take something down on Freenet, it's basically impossible. You could go raid the data center and take all the servers out. Guess what? There's copies in every other data center in the world, so you're not getting very far. But each one of these has their own ideology. If you stuck Tor people and I2P people in a room, there'd be a great argument about why 3 versus 4 layers of encryption, about what the better way is to do it, whatever. Doesn't matter to me at this point. The point is that they all provide these features and they all provide a choice, which is what I'm interested in. A super simple illustration of how Tor works. Basically, Tor Network, you connect to it, and there's a series of nodes. And the way this works is that those 3 layers of encryption get peeled off as you go through the nodes. So it starts out with you and the next hop in the network, illustrated by the first green computer there, right? And when you connect to that, it peels off that first layer of encryption. It says, I know how to talk here. Well, that computer then talks to the next computer in the node, and this stuff is randomized. And that peels off another layer of encryption before it finally gets to your exit node, where it peels off the last layer of encryption and turns it loose onto the internet or the Tor network or whatever it is, okay? So this is basically how this works. The nodes only know the identity of the node that preceded them, okay? So when you connect to a resource on the internet, you know, when you went through all this work to protect your identity and logged into Facebook, Facebook only knows the red computer. Okay, they don't know where you started, right? And that's kind of the idea behind this at a high level. I2P functions in a fairly similar way with some technological differences, like I said, that people will argue about a lot. Freenet works completely differently, but again, the point isn't to dig into all of their technical capabilities. It's more about this is generally what they do. So I want to take a minute too now to just do a quick demo of what it looks like to access the dark web, okay? Because I want to get rid of the whisper. Okay, lots of people, have you been on the dark web? Yep, in about 5 seconds, all of you will have been, all right? So, first thing I want to do is bring up another tab and be able to read, because I, without presenter notes, can't see anything. All right. So first thing, I'm going to talk about Tor today because it's fairly straightforward and people are familiar with it. Go to torproject.org. First thing that you're going to see is you're going to get to this homepage. There's a download link there. Download the Tor browser. That's how that works. Okay. If you've downloaded something before, you're good. Depending on what you use, if you use like a Linux distribution or other distributions, Mac works fine if you download the browser. You can also install it from Brew. On Linux, sometimes it's in your package manager. There's a launcher that will go down and pull down the latest version of the Tor browser. Whatever. Point is, it's simple. If you can click a download link, you're pretty good. The next step is going to be installing. Okay? If you've ever installed a piece of software on your computer, you're still good. Okay, so if we can get past these 2 amazingly technologically difficult hurdles, you can get on the dark web. Once we get that done and you install it, you get a thing that looks like this. If any of you guys have ever used Firefox before, you're still not lost. Okay? The Tor browser is based on Firefox. And once you're here, there's a few things that you can do. So again, first thing I want to do is verify that I'm actually on Tor. Okay, congratulations, I'm on Tor. That's awesome. Now if I look back here, this is my regular browser. Second one. You'd think I'd have my bookmarks memorized, right? Okay, well, we verified that one of these browsers is using Tor and one's not. Okay, so this is a good thing to do after you connect people. It's like if you want to be anonymous, you should verify you're actually anonymous. The Tor project provides a page to check that out. All right, so that's cool. Next thing I can do is actually check where the internet thinks I'm coming from, which I think is this link right here. Okay, IP location. Somebody that's looking at a bigger screen than me, tell me where I'm at. Amsterdam, awesome. Anybody here in Amsterdam? So that seems to be working. Yeah, there we go, yeah. Help me out. All right, so my regularly configured browser, I assume says somewhere near Salt Lake or Provo. What's it? All right, close enough, right? So we can see here, Tor browser has, just by installing and using a different browser, I'm able to ensure that I'm connecting through that series of nodes and that it looks like I'm coming from somewhere other than I am. So I've handled a couple of things. I've dealt with some security and I've dealt with some privacy, anonymity, right? Now, I think, which one is that? That's a good one. Okay. So once you get on Tor, then what, right? I'm on the dark web, yay, we've done it. Okay, that's how exciting it is and how difficult it is. So once you're here, let's hope that opens in a new tab. All right, what can you do? Well, you can do a lot of things that you do everywhere else. You want to look at the news? Okay, fine. Here's a wiki page. Okay, this is the hidden wiki, I believe. Basically gives you an index of a lot of stuff on the dark web, things you might find interesting. Okay, kind of like what the internet used to look like before search engines. You used to go to this page and check out all the stuff. Now, I don't want to waste time trying to navigate all this stuff because I can't see it, but one of the interesting things I was talking about earlier is there's actually a note on here. You guys might be able to see some of it up there, the red letters probably. They were down for a few weeks, okay? They're running on Tor, and there was a massive bust over in Europe in their data center for other people on the dark web, and they took all the servers in the data center. Okay, Tor is not decentralized, is a thing that I brought up earlier, where I2P and Freenet have some decentralization aspects to them. So when the Fed showed up and took all of the servers in the data center, even though these guys weren't doing anything illegal, they were kind of swept up in the process, and they're back online now, but it took a couple weeks because they had to go find some new servers. Okay, if you've been running on one of the other networks that have more decentralization and resiliency to that, something like Freenet, this would have never disappeared because it's actually in 1 million copies all over the internet. So you can look at indexes of what is on the dark web. We can look at things like news. So maybe you want to look at news that hasn't been tailored to your personal preferences. You want to hear other viewpoints instead of just having your own personal biases reinforced over and over again. So you have an option here to go and look at a website that is a major reporting agency throughout the world. And you're going to get first-tier news, but without any of it being customized to you. You're just going to see the news. Okay? And there's lots of resources like this on the dark web. I've got a whole list of them here, and I'm not going to go through each of them. But you can go to DuckDuckGo from Tor. So you're hiding and browsing privately, anonymously, right? And take that extra step to make sure that even though DuckDuckGo says that they don't track your information, they definitely cannot if you're doing it through Tor. And that brings up another point that I think is really important here, which is my hope is that through usage of the dark web, it gives each of us a tool to get beyond the pinky swear. Right? If a company says, like DuckDuckGo, we're not tracking you, then it should not matter if I use your site anonymously. If I turn off ads, cookies, scripts, and I get there from a place you can't track, your site should function exactly the same way as it does if I go there from another avenue, right? Which gives us a little bit of power back, because now we can use this to make the internet a better place. We can use this to hold companies accountable if they say that they're not selling our data or they're not abusing our privacy, right? Because what's going to happen is we've been able to take some level of control about how we interact and prove that they're not doing those things because it still functions. All right, so I want to talk about a call to action, and this is where we're going to finish up. I'm going to take you back in history again, just for a minute, okay, to Amsterdam in 1943. Amsterdam had been invaded by the Nazi Party, and the Nazi Party had been rounding up Jews in Amsterdam with incredible effectiveness. And the reason why was because there was a public register there that had very detailed information on every single person that lived in the city, including their nationality or ethnicity. And so as a result of that, the Jews had no chance. Okay, there were pictures. You couldn't pose as somebody else. You couldn't offer a fake ID. You couldn't go get food somewhere else, right? Because of the detailed information that was there. Now, there was a group of people in Amsterdam that was aware of this, and it was a teacher, it was a doctor, it was a couple of students, there was a tailor. All in all, there was about 27 of them, I believe, if I remember correctly, that decided that they had to do something about this. Okay, it wasn't the army. It wasn't trained soldiers. It was normal people that put together a plan and said, we don't want to hurt anybody. We're not in this as combat. We just need to stop what's happening, right? So they hatched this plan where they would sneak into the public register, which was under Nazi guard. They would knock the guards out. They had a doctor with them who could actually administer some stuff. They didn't want to harm anybody. And they had a tailor that made policeman uniforms for them, so they looked official, and they wouldn't be suspicious right away when they walked in the door. And so they waited until nighttime, and they went in, knocked the guards out, and poured kerosene all over the records. Then they lit it all on fire. Well, they had also coordinated with the fire department. They said, don't show up right away, okay? And then when they did, they said, use a lot of water. Let's make sure we finish this off. And so a bunch of normal people saw something that wasn't working right and decided to do something about it, and they destroyed the Amsterdam Public Register. And so that's what I'd like to do today. I'd like to have each of you decide to do something about it. Because one of the problems that we have right now with the dark web is that it's hard. Okay, it's hard to get to. I showed you something pretty easy, but for non-technology people, they're not going to go do that because they wouldn't even know where to start. So they need us to facilitate that process. This little box that I'm showing right here is something I have at home. I love this thing. It fits in my hand. It's got a network port on each end, okay? And I can use it inline, or it's actually a wireless access point. So in my house, if you connect to that wireless network, you're automatically on VPN and Tor. No configuration necessary, super simple. Anybody in my house knows how to connect to a Wi-Fi network. These types of things make stuff easy. You know, it's a little difficult right now to create content for the dark web. There's not a lot that's useful up there. You know, maybe somebody should create a Wix or a Weebly for the dark web. Wouldn't take more than, a couple hours worth of scripting to make that happen. Okay, and we have the skills to do that, right? My mother-in-law does not. So this is what I'd like to leave you with today. I'd like you to walk out of here and go use the dark web, okay? Do what you can do. If you're great at writing software, write some cool software that makes the dark web easier. If you like hardware, build a cool device. If you aren't technical at all and you just like security and you think this is important, go read a book and talk to somebody about it, right? Tell them that privacy matters. Tell them why decentralization is important, and tell them why we want our data to be secure. That's it. Go play on the dark web. Thanks for coming. I think I've got just a couple minutes if there's yeah.
What is that device?
That's called an Ananobox. Okay, so it's basically just a single board computer in there, and you can build your own. I purchased that one because it's super easy. But yeah, It's just any single board computer. You could do it with a Raspberry Pi. You could do it with a Arduino, whatever you want. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah, speed's definitely an issue, and what I found now is it depends on the site. So you see that people that are hosting in better locations, like DuckDuckGo, is super fast, right? They're a corporation that's enabling people on the dark web. Some of these independent news sites or like a social media site, they're still terrible. They're not super fast. Yeah.
How do you deal with those companies blocking more traffic or horizontal?
Yeah, and that comes down to the network effect, right? So that's a real problem. That's like, I try to browse things from Tor, and they're like, nope. And I found this very interesting when I was researching some of this. I went to a lot of state government websites. Most of them let me in okay. Utah was like, yeah, no problem, I don't care. New York City was fine. Texas at the time had just been hit with that massive ransomware attack. They were like, nope, you're not getting anywhere near us, right? So, I mean, that's definitely an issue, but I think it's an issue that's addressable through usage, okay? It's that network effect I talk about. If there's enough people there that they have to account for it, then they will account for it. But until that exists, then there's always going to be things we can't access this way. Anybody else? Yeah. Probably. I mean, I think I've been on the FBI watch list for about 20 years because of my career, and it's like I subscribe to Linux magazines and don't have social networking accounts, but you know, all of that puts you on the list. Just downloading the software, I don't think necessarily puts you on any list. You can easily use a VPN or some other technology to go download the software and at least get some level of anonymity, right, until you make the connections. There is certain content on the dark web that absolutely, I mean, unequivocally, do not view, do not go past go. That will get you in trouble. And I'm not going to talk about what that is, but I think anybody that has any understanding of the law would know when they're crossing some lines pretty quickly. Yeah. I have at times, I don't currently, and I would like to again in the future. I'm actually working a lot right now. I want to create content for the dark web, so that's where I'm focusing my efforts right now as opposed to exit nodes, but yeah. Yeah, no, that's power cords. Yep. Yeah. Uh-huh. Sure. Yep, I agree with you. And Mozilla by default, I mean, you can just change, go to about config. You can make Firefox access Tor sites. You don't have to download the Tor browser. The reason why I say to do that is because it's got other configuration in there that plug in security, things like that, that helps. Yep. Yeah, cool. All right, I think we need to get out of here so the next guy can get going. But thank you guys.
Testing, testing. Hello? Is that good?